I never thought betrayal would taste like stale coffee in a conference room where I wasn't invited. For 12 years, I'd built relationships, closed deals, and made my boss millions. But when the biggest opportunity of my career walked through our doors, Chen decided I wasn't worth a seat at the table. What he didn't know was that sometimes the universe has a way of evening the score, and when Harrison Industries called me directly, everything changed. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The elevator doors closed behind me with a soft ding, sealing my fate on the 32nd floor of the Morrison Associates building in downtown Seattle. It was March 15th, and the Pacific Northwest rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows like an ominous countdown. I had no idea that this Tuesday morning would be the beginning of the end of everything I thought I knew about loyalty, trust, and the corporate world I'd called home for over a decade. My name is Dexter Morrison, though everyone calls me Dex. At 42, I'd spent the last 12 years climbing the ladder at Morrison Associates, the commercial real estate firm my uncle founded, but that I'd helped build into one of Seattle's most respected agencies. The irony of sharing a last name with the company wasn't lost on me, though I'd earned every promotion through merit, not nepotism. My Uncle Theodore had made that crystal clear from day one. I walked through the familiar hallways toward my corner office, past the motivational posters about teamwork and success that now seemed like cruel jokes. The morning had started normally enough. I grabbed my usual double espresso from the lobby cafe, exchanged pleasantries with Sandra, our receptionist, and settled in to review the Harrison Industries proposal that had consumed my life for the past 3 months. Harrison Industries was the white whale every commercial real estate agent in the Pacific Northwest had been chasing. They were a massive tech conglomerate looking to consolidate their operations into a single, state-of-the-art headquarters. The deal was worth $5 million in commission alone, not counting the prestige and future business it would generate. I'd been the one to make first contact with their facilities director, Jennifer Walsh, at a networking event back in January. I'd nurtured that relationship, spent countless hours understanding their needs, and crafted a proposal that perfectly matched their vision. The proposal sat on my desk like a sleeping giant. 230 pages of meticulously researched properties, financial projections, and strategic recommendations. I'd worked weekends, missed my nephew's birthday party, and postponed a long overdue vacation to make it perfect. Every detail had been scrutinized, every number verified twice. This wasn't just a proposal, it was my masterpiece. My phone buzzed with a text from Chen, my direct supervisor, and the company's senior vice president. Conference room B in 10 minutes. Bring the Harrison file. Marcus had joined the company 3 years ago, recruited from a competitor with promises of revolutionizing our approach to major accounts. He was 35, ambitious, and had a Harvard MBA that he mentioned in approximately every third conversation. Where I relied on relationship building and genuine expertise, Marcus operated through politics and presentation. He could make a 2-page memo sound like the Declaration of Independence and somehow always managed to be in the right place when credit was being distributed. I gathered the Harrison materials and headed to Conference Room B, a sleek space with a view of Elliott Bay that we reserved for our most important meetings. As I approached, I could see through the glass walls that the room was already occupied. Marcus sat at the head of the polished table, flanked by Jennifer Walsh from Harrison Industries and 2 other executives I recognized from their website. My step faltered. This was the presentation meeting, the one we'd scheduled for next Friday, the one I was supposed to lead. I stood outside the conference room, clutching my proposal, watching Marcus gesture enthusiastically at a PowerPoint presentation I'd never seen before. The slides looked familiar, though. The property recommendations, the financial projections, the strategic timeline, they were mine, but repackaged in Marcus's signature style, with his name prominently displayed as the lead consultant. Jennifer Walsh nodded appreciatively as Marcus explained the benefits of the waterfront property I'd identified in South Lake Union. I'd spent a full day touring that building with the owner, learning about its unique features and negotiating preliminary terms. Now Marcus was presenting my discoveries as his insights, my relationships as his connections. My hands trembled as I watched him flip to the financial analysis slide. Those numbers represented weeks of work, countless spreadsheets, and late-night phone calls with lenders and contractors. The presentation was flawless because I made it flawless, but my name appeared nowhere on the materials. Sandra's voice crackled through the building's intercom system. "Dexter Morrison to conference room B. Dexter Morrison to conference room B." I knocked on the glass door, and Marcus looked up with what I could only describe as theatrical surprise. He opened the door just wide enough to slip through, closing it behind him so the Harrison executives couldn't hear our conversation. "Dex, there you are. Thanks for bringing the materials. I'll take it from here." "Marcus, this is my presentation. These are my clients." I kept my voice low, but couldn't hide the confusion and anger building inside me. He glanced back at the conference room where Jennifer Walsh was examining her phone. "Actually, Dex, there's been a change in strategy. Uncle Theodore felt it would be better to have senior leadership handle this particular account. You understand, right? It's a $5 million deal. We need our A-team on it." The words hit me like a physical blow. A-team. As if I hadn't been carrying this company's major accounts for years? As if I hadn't personally generated over $15 million in commission since joining the firm? I've been developing this relationship for 3 months. Jennifer Walsh specifically requested to work with me.
Marcus's expression hardened slightly. "And we appreciate all your preliminary work. Really, we do. But this is business, Dex. Sometimes the junior staff has to step aside when the big boys need to play." Junior staff. I had more experience in commercial real estate than Marcus had in his entire career. I'd been at this company when he was still trying to figure out what to do with his expensive degree. "I want to speak with Theodore," I said. "Uncle Theodore is the one who made this decision," Marcus replied, using the family connection like a weapon. "He feels that given the scope of this deal, it requires someone with my level of expertise and educational background." Through the glass, I could see Jennifer Walsh looking toward the door with growing impatience. She caught my eye and smiled, the warm recognition of someone who'd shared multiple coffee meetings and had specifically complimented my thorough understanding of their needs. "Marcus, she doesn't even know you. I'm the one who's been working with her team." "She will after today," he said confidently. "Look, Dex, I know this is disappointing, but that's how it works in the big leagues. You did good work on the research phase. We'll make sure you get credited appropriately in the internal reports." Credited appropriately. As if this were some kind of group project instead of my career-defining opportunity. I handed him the file, feeling like I was surrendering a piece of my soul. "This is wrong, Marcus. You know this is wrong." He took the materials without meeting my eyes. "What I know is that Harrison Industries is about to sign with Morrison Associates for the biggest deal in our company's history. That's what matters." He slipped back into the conference room, and I watched him resume his presentation, using my work, my relationships, and my expertise to close what should have been my deal. Jennifer Walsh looked toward the door once more, clearly wondering where I was, but Marcus smoothly redirected her attention to the next slide. I walked back to my office in a daze, past colleagues who had no idea that I'd just been professionally executed in broad daylight. The rain had intensified, turning the world outside into a gray blur that matched my mood perfectly. My phone rang 20 minutes later. It was Marcus. "Great news, Dex! Harrison Industries loved the presentation. They're moving forward with our proposal, and we should have a signed contract by the end of the week." "Congratulations," I managed to say, though the word tasted like ashes. "I wanted you to know that your research was invaluable. Really solid groundwork. We couldn't have done it without that initial legwork." Initial legwork. As if 3 months of relationship building and strategic planning were just the preliminary phase of Marcus's genius. "Is there anything else?" I asked. "Actually, yes. Theodore Morrison wants to see you in his office. I think he wants to personally thank you for your contribution to the team effort." I hung up without responding and made my way to the executive floor. Theodore Morrison's office occupied a corner of the building with panoramic views of both the city and the Sound. At 68, my uncle was still sharp as a razor, with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded respect in any room. He'd built this company from nothing, working 16-hour days and treating every client like family. "Come in, Dex," he said, without looking up from a contract he was reviewing. "Close the door behind you." I settled into one of the leather chairs across from his massive oak desk, the same chairs where he'd offered me a job fresh out of college, where he'd promoted me to senior associate, where he'd promised me a partnership track if I continued to excel. "Marcus tells me you're disappointed about the Harrison account." "Disappointed doesn't begin to cover it, Uncle Ted. I developed that relationship. I created that proposal. That should have been my presentation." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with the same analytical gaze he used when evaluating properties. "Dex, you're a good agent, one of our best, actually, but the Harrison deal is bigger than any individual contributor. It's about the company's reputation, our future growth, our ability to compete with the major firms. And you don't think I'm capable of representing the company at that level? I think Marcus has certain advantages in these high-stakes situations: his educational background, his presentation skills, his strategic thinking. You're more of a relationship guy, which is valuable, but this deal required a different approach." The words stung because they revealed how my uncle really saw me, not as a potential partner or leader, but as a good soldier who could do the groundwork while others claimed the glory. "Jennifer Walsh specifically wanted to work with me. She told me she appreciated my thorough understanding of their needs, my attention to detail. She trusted me."
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "And that trust will transfer to the company. That's how it works, Dex. Individual relationships matter, but institutional credibility matters more." I sat in silence, processing the fact that my own uncle was justifying cutting me out of the biggest opportunity of my career. This wasn't about what was best for the company. This was about Marcus's ambition and my uncle's willingness to enable it. "Is there anything else?" I asked, echoing my earlier conversation with Marcus. "Actually, yes." Theodore pulled out a folder from his desk drawer. "I've been thinking about your career development. You've been here 12 years, and while you've done solid work, I think you might benefit from some fresh perspective." He slid the folder across the desk. Inside was a job posting for a position at Hartley & Sons, a smaller firm specializing in residential and small commercial properties. The salary was 20% less than what I was currently making. "Jim Hartley is an old friend," my uncle continued. "He's looking for someone with your experience to head up their commercial division. It might be a good opportunity for you to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond." The message was clear. Take the hint and leave voluntarily, or face an increasingly uncomfortable situation at Morrison Associates. Either way, my future at the company was over. "You're pushing me out," I said quietly. "I'm offering you options. The Harrison deal has highlighted some organizational needs. We're restructuring the senior associate level, focusing on agents who can handle the strategic aspects of major accounts. Marcus will be taking over most of your current portfolio." Most of my current portfolio. Relationships I'd built over years, clients who trusted me specifically, deals I'd nurtured from initial contact to final signature. All of it was being transferred to Marcus like files in a cabinet. "This is unbelievable," I said, standing up from my chair. 12 years of loyalty, of generating millions in revenue for this company, and you're disposing of me like outdated equipment. "Dex, please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. You're a good agent, but this business is evolving. We need people who can think strategically, who can operate at the highest levels. Marcus represents the future of this company." I looked around the office, at the family photos that included pictures of me at company events, at the awards and recognition that my work had helped generate. None of it mattered. Blood might be thicker than water, but money was thicker than both. "When do you want my resignation?" I asked. "Take some time to think about it. The Hartley position is available immediately, but you could also consider this an opportunity to explore other options. Take a few days to decide what's best for your future." I walked out of my uncle's office, feeling like I'd been hollowed out from the inside. 12 years of my life, sacrificed relationships, Countless nights and weekends spent building something I thought I was part of, all gone because Marcus Chen had a better degree and smoother presentation skills. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I cleaned out my desk, boxing up the personal items that had accumulated over more than a decade. The coffee mug from my first major deal, the stress ball from a particularly difficult negotiation, the photo of me and the team celebrating our record-breaking year 2 years ago. It all felt like artifacts from someone else's life. Colleagues stopped by to offer awkward condolences, having heard through the office grapevine that I was transitioning to new opportunities. Some seemed genuinely sorry to see me go, while others maintained the careful neutrality of people who didn't want to be associated with someone who'd fallen out of favor. Marcus appeared at my cubicle as I was packing the last box. "Dex, I hope there are no hard feelings about all this. Business is business, you know? But I want you to know that I respect the work you did on Harrison. Really quality stuff." I looked up at him, this ambitious climber who destroyed my career without a second thought, and felt something cold settle in my chest. "No hard feelings, Marcus. I'm sure you'll do great with my accounts." He smiled, missing or ignoring the edge in my voice. "I appreciate that. Professional to the end. That's what I've always respected about you." After he left, I sat alone in my stripped office, looking out at the Seattle skyline I'd admired every morning for 12 years. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained gray and threatening. I thought about calling my ex-wife Sarah to tell her what had happened, but we'd been divorced for 3 years, and our relationship had never recovered from the long hours and missed dinners that my dedication to this job had caused. I thought about calling my parents in Portland, but I couldn't bear to hear my father's voice asking what I'd done wrong, or my mother's sympathetic but ultimately helpless attempts to make me feel better. I thought about calling my few remaining friends. Most of them were either colleagues I'd just lost or people I'd drifted away from during my obsessive focus on climbing the corporate ladder. The security guard, an elderly man named Frank who'd been with the building for decades, helped me carry my boxes to the parking garage. We rode the elevator down in comfortable silence. Frank had seen hundreds of executives come and go over the years, and he understood that sometimes words weren't necessary. "Take care of yourself, Mr. Morrison," he said, as we loaded the boxes into my BMW. Things have a way of working out. I drove home to my condo in Belltown, a sleek one-bedroom unit with floor-to-ceiling windows and all the modern amenities that were supposed to represent success. It felt empty and sterile, like a hotel room where I'd been staying temporarily for the past several years. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat on my couch, staring out at Elliott Bay and trying to process what had just happened. 12 years of my life gone. My career destroyed. My professional reputation decimated by association with failure and being pushed out. The bourbon burned going down, but it was nothing compared to the burning sensation in my chest. Betrayal had a physical weight to it, I discovered. It sat heavy in my stomach and made my hands shake with suppressed anger. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. For a moment, I hoped it might be someone from Morrison Associates telling me this had all been a mistake, that they'd reconsidered, that they needed me after all. Instead, it was a spam message about a local restaurant's happy hour specials. I turned off my phone and poured another bourbon. Outside my window, the city went about its business. Millions of people pursuing their own dreams and ambitions, most of them unaware that somewhere in a Belltown condo, a man's entire professional identity was dissolving like sugar in rain. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd spent 12 years helping other people find their perfect spaces, matching clients with properties that would house their dreams and ambitions, only to find myself professionally homeless. I'd built my identity around being the guy who could solve problems, who could find solutions, who could make things work. Now, I couldn't even figure out how to fix my own situation. As the evening grew darker and the bourbon grew lower in the bottle, I started making a mental list of everything I'd lost. The Harrison deal, obviously, but that was just the beginning. My portfolio of clients, relationships that had taken years to build. My reputation in the Seattle commercial real estate market, which would inevitably suffer when word got out that I'd been pushed aside for bigger deals. My financial security, which depended on the steady stream of commissions that came from managing major accounts. But more than that, I'd lost my sense of identity. For 12 years, I'd been Dex Morrison, senior associate at Morrison Associates, the relationship guy who could close deals through trust and expertise. Without that title, without that position, who was I? The bourbon bottle was half empty when I finally stumbled to bed, still wearing my work clothes, too exhausted and defeated to bother changing. I lay there in the dark, listening to the sounds of the city below and wondering how I was going to rebuild my life from scratch at 42 years old. What I didn't know, as I drifted into a restless sleep filled with dreams of conference rooms and missed opportunities, was that my phone was buzzing with an incoming call from a number I would have recognized. Jennifer Walsh from Harrison Industries was trying to reach me, wondering why I hadn't been in the presentation that morning, wanting to discuss some concerns she had about the proposal Marcus had presented. But my phone was still turned off, sitting silent on my kitchen counter while I slept through what could have been the beginning of my comeback story. Instead, I woke up the next morning to the gray light of another Seattle dawn, feeling like I was starting over from zero, with no idea that sometimes the universe has a way of keeping score, and that the biggest betrayals sometimes set the stage for the most unexpected victories. The pounding in my head matched the relentless drumming of rain against my bedroom window. I'd slept 14 hours straight, my body finally succumbing to the exhaustion that had been building for months. When I finally dragged myself out of bed, it was past noon on Thursday, and the gray Seattle sky made it feel like perpetual twilight. My phone sat on the kitchen counter where I'd abandoned it the night before, still powered down. For the first time in over a decade, I had nowhere to be, no meetings to attend, no clients to call. The freedom felt suffocating. I made coffee with shaking hands, the caffeine withdrawal adding to my overall misery. The silence in my condo was deafening. No bustling office sounds, no ringing phones, no conversations about deals and commissions. Just the hum of my refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic 30 floors below. As I sat at my kitchen island, staring into my coffee cup, I tried to formulate a plan. The logical next step was to start job hunting, to reach out to contacts at other firms, to salvage what I could of my career. But the thought of explaining what had happened at Morrison Associates, of admitting that I'd been outmaneuvered by Marcus Chen, made my stomach turn. I turned my phone back on, dreading the inevitable flood of messages. The screen lit up with a cascade of notifications, missed calls, voicemails, text messages. Most were from colleagues at Morrison Associates, probably offering sympathy or fishing for gossip. A few were from clients who'd heard through the grapevine that I was leaving. But there was one notification that made me sit up straighter. 7 missed calls from Jennifer Walsh at Harrison Industries. 7. The calls had started Tuesday evening, just hours after Marcus's presentation, and continued through Wednesday. My pulse quickened as I scrolled through the call log. Why would Jennifer be calling me if the deal was already moving forward with Marcus? Had something gone wrong with the contract? Had Harrison Industries changed their mind? I listened to the first voicemail, dated Tuesday at 6:47 p.m. "Hi Dex, this is Jennifer Walsh from Harrison Industries. I was hoping to speak with you about yesterday's presentation. Could you give me a call when you get this? It's somewhat urgent." The second voicemail, Wednesday morning at 9:15 a.m. "Dex, it's Jennifer again. I really need to speak with you about the Morrison Associates proposal. I have some concerns I'd like to discuss. Please call me back as soon as possible." By the fourth voicemail, Wednesday afternoon, Jennifer's tone had shifted from professional concern to obvious frustration. "Dex, I don't know why you're not returning my calls, but we need to talk. The proposal your colleague presented doesn't match the discussions we've had over the past 3 months. There are significant discrepancies, and frankly, I'm questioning whether Morrison Associates truly understands our needs. Please call me." The final voicemail, left at 8:30 p.m. Wednesday night, was the most revealing. "Dex, this is my last attempt to reach you through official channels.
I'm not sure what's happening at your company, but the person who presented to us yesterday clearly didn't understand the nuances of our requirements that you and I discussed extensively. His recommendations don't align with our strategic vision, and his financial projections seem to be based on incomplete information. I'm starting to think we need to reconsider our partnership with Morrison Associates entirely. If you don't call me back by tomorrow morning, I'm going to assume that your company is no longer interested in our business. I sat frozen, holding the phone to my ear even though the voicemail had ended. Jennifer Walsh wasn't happy with Marcus's presentation. More than that, she was questioning the entire partnership with Morrison Associates. The deal that had cost me my career might be falling apart. My hands trembled as I dialed Jennifer's direct number. She answered on the first ring. "Dax, finally! I was starting to think you disappeared off the face of the earth." "Jennifer, I'm so sorry for not returning your calls sooner. There's been a situation at the office and—" "What kind of situation? Because I have to tell you, Tuesday's presentation was nothing like what you and I had discussed. The gentleman who presented, Marcus something, seemed to have a completely different understanding of our space requirements." I closed my eyes, choosing my words carefully. "There was a last-minute change in our team structure. Marcus took over the presentation while I was reassigned to other projects." "Reassigned? Dex, you're the one who's been working with us for 3 months. You're the one who understands our culture, our growth projections, our specific needs. This Marcus person suggested properties that are completely wrong for us." "What do you mean?" Jennifer's frustration was evident in her voice. "He recommended that waterfront building in South Lake Union, the one you and I toured together. But when I asked him about the elevator capacity and the floor load requirements for our server equipment, he had no idea what I was talking about. You and I spent an hour discussing those exact specifications." My jaw clenched. Of course, Marcus hadn't understood those details. He'd stolen my presentation, but hadn't bothered to learn the underlying relationships and conversations that had informed every recommendation. "And his financial projections," Jennifer continued, "they seem to be based on standard market rates, not the preliminary negotiations you'd already conducted with the property owners. The numbers he presented were significantly higher than what you'd indicated we could achieve." This was getting worse by the minute. Marcus had not only stolen my work, but had bungled the execution so badly that he jeopardized the entire deal. "Jennifer, I need to be completely honest with you. I'm no longer with Morrison Associates as of yesterday. There was a disagreement about the handling of your account." There was silence on the other end of the line. When Jennifer spoke again, her voice was sharp with understanding. "Let me guess. Someone decided that a deal this size needed to be handled by senior management, and you got pushed aside." "Something like that. And this Marcus person presented your work as his own." I didn't need to answer. Jennifer was clearly intelligent enough to piece together what had happened. "Dex, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. If you were to handle our account independently, not through Morrison Associates, would you be able to deliver on the vision we've discussed?" My heart stopped. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Harrison Industries is looking for a partner, not just a vendor. We want someone who understands our business, our culture, our long-term goals. Over the past 3 months, you've demonstrated that understanding. Your former colleague has not." "Jennifer, I appreciate your confidence, but I don't have a company anymore. I don't have the infrastructure to handle a deal of this magnitude." "What if you did?" The question hung in the air between us. I walked to my floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the Seattle skyline where Morrison Associates occupied its prominent position. "I don't understand." "Dex, Harrison Industries has been burned before by large firms that promise personal attention but deliver corporate indifference. We're willing to take a chance on someone who's proven they understand our needs, even if that someone is starting fresh." I felt dizzy. "Are you offering me the deal?" "Directly? I'm offering you the opportunity to compete for it. We're pulling our proposal for Morrison Associates effective immediately.
If you're interested in forming your own consultancy or partnering with another firm, we'd be willing to consider a new proposal, one that actually reflects the work you've already done. This was insane. Jennifer Walsh was essentially offering to hand me the $5 million deal that had cost me my job. But I had no company, no support staff, no legal structure to handle something of this magnitude. Jennifer, this is incredibly generous, but I need to be realistic here. I'd need to set up a business entity, establish banking relationships, arrange for errors and omissions insurance, hire support staff. That takes time, and you need to move forward with your consolidation plans. How much time? I ran mental calculations. If I pushed hard, cut through red tape, called in favors, 2 weeks, maybe 3. Dex, our timeline has us needing to finalize our real estate strategy by the end of April. That gives us about 6 weeks. If you can establish yourself as a legitimate consultancy within 3 weeks, we'll give you the opportunity to represent your original vision. I couldn't speak. The magnitude of what she was offering, the risk she was taking on my behalf, was overwhelming. There's one condition, Jennifer continued. We'll need you to partner with an established firm for the legal and financial aspects of the transaction. We can't work with a one-person operation on something this complex, but we don't want to lose your expertise in relationship management. I understand. That makes complete sense. Think about it, Dex. You have until Monday to let me know if you're interested. If not, we'll need to start the search process over again with other firms. After I hung up, I sat in my living room for an hour, staring at my phone and trying to process what had just happened. Jennifer Walsh had essentially offered me my career back, but on my own terms. The deal that Marcus had stolen was being handed back to me, if I had the courage to grab it. But the logistics were daunting. Starting a consulting firm from scratch in 3 weeks would require a level of hustle I wasn't sure I possessed. I'd need to incorporate, establish banking relationships, arrange for professional liability insurance, find office space, and somehow convince an established firm to partner with me on a major transaction. I opened my laptop and started researching business formation requirements in Washington state. Articles of incorporation, registered agent requirements, federal tax ID numbers, state business licenses. The list seemed endless, but each item was manageable if I approached it systematically. By evening, I had a preliminary timeline mapped out. Days 1 through 5, legal formation and banking setup. Days 6 through 10, insurance arrangements and partnership negotiations. Days 11 through 15, office setup and staff hiring. It was aggressive, but not impossible. The bigger challenge was finding a partner firm. I needed an established company with the infrastructure to handle major transactions, but one that would be willing to let me maintain control over the client relationship. Most major firms would want to absorb the deal entirely, just like Morrison Associates had done. I spent Thursday night researching smaller boutique firms in Seattle, looking for companies that might be interested in a partnership arrangement. By Friday morning, I had a list of 12 potential partners, ranked by their likelihood of being interested in a collaboration. My first call was to Pacific Northwest Properties, a well-respected firm that specialized in institutional real estate but was small enough to value a major new client relationship. The founding partner, David Kim, had been in the Seattle market for 20 years and had a reputation for integrity and innovation. David, this is Dex Morrison. I know we've met briefly at industry events. I have an unusual proposition that might interest you. David was intrigued enough to agree to a coffee meeting that afternoon. We met at a small cafe in Fremont, away from the downtown area where I might run into former colleagues from Morrison Associates. I laid out the situation honestly. The work I'd done on Harrison Industries, the betrayal by Marcus, Jennifer's offer to work with me directly. David listened without interruption, occasionally asking clarifying questions about the scope of the deal and Harrison's timeline. "So let me make sure I understand this correctly," David said when I finished. "Harrison Industries is willing to work with you directly, but you need an established firm to handle the transaction infrastructure." "Exactly. I maintain the client relationship and strategic direction, but I need a partner for the legal, financial, and administrative aspects." David stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "What kind of partnership structure are you envisioning?" "I was thinking a 60-40 split on commissions. I handle client relations, property identification, and negotiation strategy.
Your firm handles contracts, closings, and regulatory compliance. And you'd be operating as an independent consultant contracted to Pacific Northwest Properties. That's one option, or I could establish my own firm and we could have a formal partnership agreement for this specific transaction. David was quiet for several minutes, clearly running calculations in his head.
Pacific Northwest Properties was successful, but not huge. A $5 million commission would represent their biggest deal in years. Dex, I'll be honest with you. This is risky for both of us. If Harrison Industries changes their mind, or if your former employer creates legal complications, we could both end up with nothing. I understand the risk, but Jennifer Walsh has already indicated that Morrison Associates is out. The question is whether Harrison moves forward with someone else or gives me the opportunity to rebuild what Marcus destroyed. What's your timeline for getting your own firm established? I outlined my 3-week plan. David looked impressed despite himself. You realize that's an incredibly aggressive timeline. Most people take months to set up a proper consultancy. Most people don't have Jennifer Walsh waiting for an answer by Monday. David laughed. Fair point. Look, Dex, I like you. I've heard good things about your work over the years, and what happened to you at Morrison Associates was bullshit. Everyone in the industry knows it. My stomach dropped. Everyone knows? Word travels fast in Seattle real estate. Marcus Chen's power play wasn't exactly subtle, and people talk. There's a lot of sympathy for your situation. This was both good and bad news. Sympathy was nice, but I didn't want to be known as the guy who got screwed over by his boss. Here's what I'm willing to do, David continued. If you can get your firm established within 3 weeks, and if Harrison Industries confirms their commitment to working with you, Pacific Northwest Properties will partner with you on a 50-50 split. We handle all the transaction infrastructure, you maintain client control and strategic direction. 50-50 was better than I'd hoped for. What do you need from me to move forward? Get your business formation completed, then bring me a signed letter of intent from Harrison Industries. If those 2 pieces are in place, we have a deal. I shook David's hand, feeling the first spark of optimism I'd experienced since Tuesday's betrayal. Walking back to my car, I pulled out my phone and called Jennifer Walsh. Jennifer, it's Dex Morrison. I've given your offer serious consideration, and I'm interested in moving forward. Excellent. What's your timeline for getting established? 3 weeks for business formation and partnership arrangements. I've already identified a potential partner firm to handle the transaction infrastructure. Perfect. I'll send you a formal letter of intent by Monday morning, contingent on your successful establishment of a legitimate consultancy. Will that work for your timeline? That's exactly what I need. After hanging up, I sat in my car in the Fremont parking lot, looking out at the ship canal and trying to absorb the magnitude of what I'd just committed to. In 3 weeks, I needed to transform myself from an unemployed ex-employee to the head of a functioning real estate consultancy with a $5 million client. The weekend became a blur of paperwork and phone calls. I drove to Olympia on Saturday to file articles of incorporation in person, expediting the process that normally took weeks. Morrison Real Estate Consulting, LLC, became an official Washington state business entity on Saturday afternoon. Sunday was devoted to banking relationships and insurance arrangements. I opened business accounts at 2 different banks, applied for a business credit card, and arranged for expedited processing of professional liability insurance through a broker who specialized in real estate consultancies. By Monday morning, I had a business entity, federal tax ID number, business bank accounts, and pending insurance coverage. Jennifer's letter of intent arrived in my email at 9 a.m. sharp. Harrison Industries is pleased to engage Morrison Real Estate Consulting for strategic real estate advisory services related to our headquarters consolidation project. This engagement is contingent upon Morrison Real Estate Consulting establishing appropriate professional partnerships to ensure comprehensive transaction support. I forwarded the letter to David Kim, along with my articles of incorporation and proof of insurance application. His response came back within an hour. Impressive work, Dex. Let's meet tomorrow to finalize our partnership agreement.
Tuesday afternoon, exactly 1 week after my professional execution at Morrison Associates, I signed a partnership agreement with Pacific Northwest Properties to jointly handle the Harrison Industries account. David's office was a modest but professional space in the Ballard neighborhood, with views of the Puget Sound and a conference room that would be perfect for client meetings. "Welcome to entrepreneurship," David said as we finished signing the partnership documents. "It's terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure." He was right. I felt like I was free-falling without a parachute, but for the first time in a week, I was moving forward instead of just processing what had happened to me. Wednesday morning, I called Jennifer Walsh to confirm that all the pieces were in place for our partnership. "Wonderful," she said. "I'd like to schedule a meeting for next Friday to review your revised proposal. Will that work?" "Absolutely. I'll have comprehensive recommendations ready for your review." "And Dex?"
I should mention that Marcus Chen called me yesterday. He seemed surprised that we were withdrawing from Morrison Associates. I told him that we were pursuing other options, but I didn't mention our arrangement with you. My stomach tightened. Marcus would eventually figure out what had happened, and his response would likely be swift and vindictive. "I appreciate you keeping our arrangement confidential for now." "Of course. I'm looking forward to seeing what you've prepared for us." Thursday evening, I was working in the temporary office space I'd rented on a month-to-month basis in the Pike Place market area when my phone rang. The caller ID showed my uncle's office number. "Hello, Uncle Theodore?" "Dex, we need to talk. My office, tomorrow morning at 10. I'm no longer an employee of Morrison Associates. I don't think we have anything to discuss." "Oh, but we do. I just received a very interesting phone call from Harrison Industries, informing me that they're terminating their agreement with our firm. They mentioned that they were pursuing other consultants. Care to explain that?" I felt a surge of satisfaction mixed with apprehension. Harrison Industries is free to work with whichever consultants they choose. "Don't play games with me, Dex. I know you're behind this. What did you tell them?" I told them the truth, that the person who presented to them didn't understand their needs or requirements. There was silence on the other end of the line. When my uncle spoke again, his voice was cold with controlled fury. "If you think you can steal our clients and start your own competing firm, you're sadly mistaken. We have non-compete agreements, confidentiality clauses, and fiduciary responsibilities that you're violating." "Uncle Theodore, I haven't violated any agreements. Harrison Industries contacted me, not the other way around. They made the decision to terminate their relationship with Morrison Associates based on their dissatisfaction with Marcus's presentation." "Bullshit. You manipulated the situation to sabotage Marcus and steal the deal for yourself." "I manipulated the situation? Marcus stole 3 months of my work and presented it as his own. He excluded me from my own client presentation and then botched the execution so badly that Harrison Industries lost confidence in your firm entirely." "That's a serious accusation, Dex. I hope you can back it up." "I can back up every word of it. Jennifer Walsh can confirm that the presentation Marcus gave didn't match the discussions she'd had with me over 3 months of relationship building. She can confirm that he couldn't answer basic questions about property specifications that she and I had covered extensively." My uncle was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted slightly. "Even if that's true, you still have obligations to this firm. You signed a non-compete agreement when you were promoted to senior associate." I had anticipated this argument and had spent considerable time reviewing my employment agreement with an attorney I'd hired specifically for this situation. "My non-compete prevents me from working for a direct competitor for 1 year. It doesn't prevent me from establishing my own consultancy or working with clients who choose to terminate their relationship with Morrison Associates for cause. We'll see about that. I'm having our legal team review your actions, and if we find any violations of your employment agreement or fiduciary responsibilities, we'll pursue all available remedies." "You do that, Uncle Theodore. And while your lawyers are reviewing my employment agreement, they might want to review Marcus's conduct in stealing my work product and misrepresenting his knowledge to prospective clients." I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking with adrenaline.
The conversation had gone exactly as I'd expected, but it was still jarring to have my own uncle threaten legal action against me. My attorney, Rachel Santos, had warned me that Morrison Associates would likely try to claim that I had improperly solicited their clients, even though the opposite was true. We'd prepared a comprehensive timeline of events, including Jennifer Walsh's voicemails and documentation of Marcus's presentation failures. The good news, Rachel had told me, is that Harrison Industries initiated contact with you after terminating their relationship with Morrison Associates. The bad news is that commercial litigation can be expensive and time-consuming even when you're in the right. I pushed the legal concerns to the back of my mind and focused on preparing for Friday's meeting with Harrison Industries. I had 48 hours to create a presentation that would secure the biggest deal of my career and validate my decision to strike out on my own. Friday morning arrived with unprecedented sunshine for March in Seattle. I took it as a good omen as I walked into David Kim's office carrying a revised proposal that represented not just 3 months of work, but the foundation of my new professional life. Jennifer Walsh arrived precisely on time, accompanied by 2 other Harrison Industries executives I recognized from their website. She smiled warmly when she saw me, a stark contrast to the polite professionalism she'd shown during Marcus's presentation. "Dex, it's good to see you again. I'd like you to meet Richard Chen, our Chief Operating Officer, and Lisa Park, our Chief Financial Officer." We shook hands and settled into David's conference room. Through the windows, Elliott Bay sparkled in the morning sunlight, and I could see ferries heading toward the Olympic Peninsula. "Before we begin," Jennifer said, "I want to acknowledge that this is an unusual situation. It's not typical for us to change consultants midstream in a project this significant. However, our experience with Morrison Associates made it clear that we needed a different approach."
She looked directly at me. "Dex, your understanding of our needs, your attention to detail, and your strategic thinking impressed our entire team during our preliminary discussions. We're hoping that your new firm can deliver on that initial promise." I opened my revised proposal, 3 weeks of intensive work that built upon but significantly improved my original recommendations. "Jennifer, Richard, Lisa, thank you for giving Morrison Real Estate Consulting the opportunity to present our vision for Harrison Industries headquarters consolidation. Over the past 3 months, I've developed a deep understanding of your corporate culture, your growth projections, and your operational requirements. This proposal reflects that understanding." I walked them through property recommendations that had been refined based on additional research and site visits, financial projections that incorporated the preliminary negotiations I'd conducted with property owners, timeline recommendations that accounted for Harrison's business cycle and cash flow considerations. But more than that, I presented a vision, not just of buildings and lease agreements, but of how their physical space could support their corporate mission, enhance their culture, and position them for future growth. Richard Chen leaned forward during my discussion of the South Lake Union property. "You mentioned that you've already had preliminary discussions with the property owner about modifications to the loading dock configuration. Can you walk us through those details?" This was exactly the kind of question that Marcus hadn't been able to answer. I pulled out detailed floor plans and engineering specifications that I'd obtained during my original research. "Absolutely. Harrison's logistics requirements are unique because of your just-in-time inventory management system. The current loading configuration wouldn't support your operational needs, but the property owner has indicated willingness to modify the design during the tenant improvement process." I spent 20 minutes walking through technical specifications, cost implications, and timeline considerations. Richard took detailed notes and asked follow-up questions that demonstrated he was genuinely impressed with the level of preparation. Lisa Park focused on the financial aspects of the proposal. "Your projected lease rates are significantly lower than what we were presented earlier this week. Can you explain the discrepancy?" The previous proposal appears to have been based on published market rates rather than actual negotiations. I've spent the past 3 months building relationships with property owners and understanding their motivations. In several cases, they're willing to accept below-market rates in exchange for a long-term commitment from a stable tenant like Harrison Industries.
I provided documentation of preliminary letters of intent from 3 different property owners, agreements that Marcus had been unaware of when he'd stolen my presentation. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, all 3 Harrison Industries executives were asking detailed questions about implementation timelines and next steps. "Dex," Jennifer said as we wrapped up, "this is exactly what we were hoping to see. Comprehensive analysis, creative solutions, and clear evidence that you understand our business." Richard Chen stood up and extended his hand. "On behalf of Harrison Industries, I'm pleased to confirm that we'd like to move forward with Morrison Real Estate Consulting as our strategic real estate partner." The words hit me like a physical force. After a week of uncertainty and 3 weeks of frantic preparation, I had just secured the deal that would establish my new firm and validate my decision to start over. "Thank you," I managed to say. "We're honored by your confidence and excited to help Harrison Industries achieve its consolidation goals." As the Harrison Industries team left David's office, I slumped into a chair, feeling the exhaustion of the past month catch up with me all at once. "Congratulations," David said, grinning widely. "You just landed the biggest deal of both our careers." "I can't believe it actually worked," I said, staring out at the Seattle skyline where Morrison Associates occupied its prominent position. 4 weeks ago, I thought my career was over." 4 weeks ago, your old career was over," David corrected. "Your new career just began." He was right. I was no longer Dex Morrison, senior associate at Morrison Associates, relationship guy who got pushed aside when the big deals came around. I was Dex Morrison, founder of Morrison Real Estate Consulting, entrepreneur who had turned his biggest professional disaster into his greatest opportunity. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. When I opened it, I recognized Marcus Chen's mobile number. "Heard you stole the Harrison deal. Enjoy it while it lasts. You have no idea what you've started." I deleted the message without responding. Marcus Chen and Morrison Associates belonged to my past. Harrison Industries and Morrison Real Estate Consulting were my future. As I drove home that evening, through the familiar streets of Seattle that now looked different somehow, I thought about the unexpected path that had led me to this moment. Being betrayed by Marcus had been devastating, but it had also forced me to discover capabilities I hadn't known I possessed. The courage to start over, the tenacity to build something from nothing, the confidence to bet on myself when everyone else had written me off. Jennifer Walsh's phone call had been the catalyst, but everything that followed had been my choice. My decision to take the risk, my willingness to work 18-hour days to make an impossible timeline, my determination to prove that I was more than just a relationship guy who could be discarded when convenient. I pulled into my building's parking garage and sat in my car for a moment, looking at my phone. There were 17 missed calls and dozens of text messages, word of Harrison Industries' decision having spread quickly through Seattle's tight-knit commercial real estate community. Some messages were congratulatory. Some were from reporters wanting to understand how a major deal had shifted from an established firm to a 3-week-old consultancy. Some were from other clients of Morrison Associates wondering if May should reconsider their representation. But the message that mattered most was from Jennifer Walsh, sent an hour after our meeting. "Dex, thank you for an excellent presentation today. Richard, Lisa, and I are confident that we've chosen the right partner for this project. Looking forward to working together over the coming months." I saved the message and headed up to my condo, which no longer felt like a temporary refuge, but like the home base for my new life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, contract negotiations, and the complex logistics of managing a major transaction.
Marcus and my uncle would undoubtedly try to create legal complications, and there would be 100 operational details to resolve. But tonight, for the first time in 4 weeks, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not because of where I'd come from, but because of where I was going. 6 months had passed since I'd signed the Harrison Industries contract, and Morrison Real Estate Consulting had evolved from a desperate gamble into a legitimate and thriving business. What started as a single client engagement had grown into a consultancy with 4 full-time employees, a permanent office in the Columbia Center, and a client roster that included 3 other major Seattle corporations. The success felt surreal at times. I'd wake up in my renovated Belltown penthouse, look out at the same Seattle skyline I'd contemplated during my darkest moments, and marvel at how completely my life had transformed. The financial security was gratifying, but what mattered more was the respect I'd earned from clients and competitors alike. Morrison Real Estate Consulting wasn't just surviving, it was setting new standards for personalized corporate real estate services. David Kim had become more than a business partner. He'd evolved into a trusted friend and mentor. Our collaboration on the Harrison Industries project had exceeded both our expectations, leading to a formal merger of our firms under the Morrison Kim Real Estate Group banner. The combined entity had the resources to compete with major firms while maintaining the personalized approach that had attracted Harrison Industries in the first place. Jennifer Walsh had become our strongest advocate, referring 3 additional clients and serving as a case study for our unique approach to corporate real estate consulting. The headquarters consolidation project had saved Harrison Industries nearly $2 million compared to their original budget, while delivering a facility that perfectly aligned with their operational needs and corporate culture. This particular Wednesday morning in September, I was reviewing proposals for a new client when my assistant, Maria Santos, knocked on my office door. Maria was a recent graduate from the University of Washington's business program, sharp and ambitious in a way that reminded me of my younger self before cynicism had set in. "Mr. Morrison, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent." "Who is it?" "Marcus Chen from Morrison Associates." I felt my stomach tighten. I hadn't spoken to Marcus since the threatening text message he'd sent after I'd secured the Harrison Industries deal. Through industry connections, I'd heard that Morrison Associates had struggled in the months following their loss of the Harrison account. Several clients had followed Harrison's lead in questioning the firm's commitment to personalized service, and 2 senior associates had left to join competitors. "Does he say what he wants?" "He mentioned something about a business proposition. He seems different than I expected, less aggressive." I considered having Maria tell him I was unavailable, but curiosity got the better of me. "Send him in." Marcus entered my office looking noticeably older than he had 6 months ago. His usually perfect hair was slightly disheveled, and his expensive suit couldn't hide the stress lines around his eyes. He looked around my spacious office with its view of Elliott Bay, taking in the awards and recognition certificates that had accumulated on my walls. "Nice setup, Dex. You've done well for yourself." "What do you want, Marcus?" He sat down without being invited, a familiar presumption that now struck me as pathetic rather than intimidating. "I want to talk about the future. Both our futures." "I'm listening." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Look, I know things got heated between us when you left Morrison Associates. There were misunderstandings, hurt feelings on both sides, but I think it's time we moved past all that." "Moved past it how?" "Morrison Associates is going through some changes. Theodore is considering retirement, and the firm is looking to restructure its operations. We've been watching what you've built here, and frankly, we're impressed." I leaned back in my chair, waiting for him to get to the point. "We want to acquire Morrison Kim Real Estate Group. Full acquisition, with you and David maintaining operational control, but under the Morrison Associates umbrella. It would give you access to our established client base, our support infrastructure, our marketing resources." The audacity was breathtaking. "You want to acquire the company you tried to destroy 6 months ago?" "Dex, that wasn't personal. That was business. Sometimes business decisions create temporary friction, but smart people find ways to move forward." "Temporary friction? Marcus, you stole 3 months of my work, excluded me from my own client presentation, and then watched while your uncle pushed me out of the company I'd helped build for 12 years. Marcus waved his hand dismissively. "Ancient history. What matters now is the opportunity in front of us. Morrison Associates has the scale and reputation to take your boutique operation to the next level. What makes you think I want to go to the next level?" "Because I know you, Dex. You're ambitious. You always have been. This little consultancy is nice, but it's limited. You can only grow so much without institutional backing." I studied Marcus carefully, trying to understand what was really driving this visit. "What's your real situation, Marcus? Because this doesn't sound like an offer from a position of strength." For the first time since entering my office, Marcus's confident facade cracked slightly. We've had some challenges since the Harrison situation. A few clients have moved to other firms. Some of our senior people have taken positions elsewhere. Theodore thinks bringing you back into the fold would help stabilize things. So this isn't really an acquisition offer. It's a rescue mission. Marcus's jaw tightened. It's a mutually beneficial business proposition. You get access to resources and scale. We get your client relationships and reputation. And what happens to my independence, my ability to serve clients the way I think they should be served? You'd have complete operational autonomy. We're not interested in micromanaging your approach. We just want access to your success. I stood up and walked to my window, looking out at the bustling Seattle waterfront. 6 months ago, I would have found this conversation impossible to imagine. Marcus Chen, the man who destroyed my career, was now asking me to save his. Let me ask you something, Marcus. Do you remember what you said to me when you stole the Harrison presentation? Dex, let's not relitigate the past. You said that sometimes the junior staff has to step aside when the big boys need to play. You called my work preliminary legwork. You said I was more of a relationship guy who couldn't handle strategic thinking. Marcus was silent, clearly uncomfortable with the reminder of his own words. Now you want to acquire my company because of my strategic thinking and client relationships. Do you see the irony in that? Look, maybe I was wrong about some things. Maybe I underestimated your capabilities. People make mistakes, Dex. The question is whether we're going to let those mistakes define our future relationship. I turned back to face him. What kind of number are we talking about for this acquisition? Marcus brightened, sensing an opening. Theodore has authorized me to offer $8 million for full acquisition, plus retention bonuses for you and David. You'd both have guaranteed employment contracts with significant equity stakes in the combined entity. $8 million. 6 months ago, that number would have seemed impossible. Now it represented validation of everything I'd built, but also the potential end of my independence. I'll need to discuss this with David and our attorney. Of course. But Dex, I hope you'll give this serious consideration. This could be the best thing for everyone involved. After Marcus left, I sat alone in my office, trying to process what had just happened. The man who'd betrayed me was now offering to make me wealthy beyond anything I'd imagined when I'd started Morrison Real Estate Consulting. But wealth came with strings attached, and those strings led directly back to the environment that had nearly destroyed me. My phone buzzed with a call from David Kim. Was that Marcus Chen I saw leaving your office? Yeah, we need to talk. David arrived within an hour, and I walked him through Marcus's proposal. David listened without interruption, occasionally asking clarifying questions about the terms and structure. $8 million is a significant number, David said when I finished. It would set both of us up financially for the rest of our lives. But we'd be giving up everything that makes this company special. Our independence, our ability to prioritize client relationships over corporate politics, our freedom to innovate. I nodded. That's exactly what I was thinking. On the other hand, David continued, Morrison Associates does have resources we lack. Their marketing reach, their support staff, their established relationships with major institutional clients. Are you saying you think we should consider it? David was quiet for several minutes, looking out at the view that had become a symbol of our success. I'm saying we should think carefully about what we want our future to look like. Do we want to stay small and independent, or do we want to build something bigger? That evening, I called Jennifer Walsh to get her perspective on the acquisition offer. Jennifer had become more than a client. She'd evolved into a trusted advisor whose judgment I valued highly. Dex, that's a fascinating development. What's your gut reaction? My gut says that going back to Morrison Associates, even as an acquired entity, would be a mistake. But the financial side of me recognizes that $8 million represents security and opportunities I might not get again. Can I ask you something? Why did you start Morrison Real Estate Consulting? Initially, because I had no choice. Marcus had stolen my work and destroyed my career. But why did you succeed? I thought about her question. Because I was able to serve clients the way I thought they should be served. Because I could prioritize relationships over politics. Because I had the freedom to innovate. And do you think you'd be able to maintain those qualities as part of Morrison Associates? Her question cut to the heart of my dilemma. Probably not. Then you have your answer. The next morning, I called a meeting with my 4 employees to discuss the acquisition offer. I'd always believed in transparency with my team, and a decision this significant would affect all of their futures. My team consisted of Maria Santos, my assistant, who'd proven herself capable of far more than administrative work, James Wright, a talented young agent I'd recruited from a competing firm, Sarah Chen, a former architect who brought unique spatial analysis skills to our property evaluations, and Robert Kim, David's nephew, who handled our financial analysis and contract negotiations. Morrison Associates has made an offer to acquire our company, I told them. I want your honest opinions about what that would mean for your careers and for the culture we've built here. Maria spoke first. Mr. Morrison, I've heard stories about what it's like to work at Morrison Associates. The politics, the backstabbing, the emphasis on billable hours over client satisfaction. I came here because I wanted to work somewhere different. James nodded in agreement. I left Hartley & Sons specifically because I was tired of the corporate culture at larger firms. The freedom we have here to really focus on our clients' needs is why I'm performing better than I ever did at my previous job. Sarah was more diplomatic, but equally clear. The acquisition might provide more resources and opportunities for advancement, but it would also mean giving up the creative freedom that attracted me to this position. Robert, perhaps because of his family connection to David, was the most conflicted. The financial security would be significant for all of us, and Morrison & Associates does have capabilities we lack, but I agree with everyone else that the culture would change dramatically. After the meeting, I walked to David's office to share my team's feedback and my own conclusion. "They're right, aren't they?" David said. "We built something special here precisely because we're not Morrison & Associates." That's what I keep coming back to. The money is tempting, but money isn't why we do this work. David smiled. "Speak for yourself. I definitely do this work for money. But I also do it because I love the challenge of matching clients with perfect properties, because I enjoy the relationships we build, because I take pride in delivering results that exceed expectations." So we're turning down $8 million? We're choosing independence over wealth. We're betting on ourselves rather than accepting someone else's definition of success. I called Marcus that afternoon to decline the acquisition offer. His response was predictably hostile. "You're making a mistake, Dex. This is the best offer you're going to get. Morrison & Associates won't stay interested forever." "I understand, but Morrison Kim Real Estate Group isn't for sale." "You think you're so much better than us now? You think your little boutique operation is going to compete with the major firms long term? I think we're going to continue doing what we do best, serving our clients' interests above our own." "That's naive, Dex. This business is about scale and resources. You can't stay small forever." "We'll see." Marcus hung up without saying goodbye, and I felt a familiar mixture of relief and apprehension. I'd just turned down more money than I'd ever imagined having, but I'd preserved something more valuable: the integrity of what we'd built. 3 weeks later, I received a call that would test my decision in an unexpected way. Jennifer Walsh's voice was tight with stress when she reached me on a Friday afternoon. "Dex, we have a problem. Harrison Industries is being acquired by a private equity firm called Blackstone Capital. They're conducting a comprehensive review of all our vendor relationships, and they're questioning our arrangement with Morrison Kim Real Estate Group." My stomach dropped. "What kind of questioning?" "They're arguing that a company of Harrison's size should be working with a major established firm rather than a boutique consultancy. They're pressuring us to switch to Morrison & Associates or one of their preferred vendors." This was Marcus's revenge. Somehow he'd gotten to the private equity firm and convinced them that Morrison Kim wasn't suitable for a major corporate client. What's our timeline? The acquisition closes in 6 weeks. The new management team wants to finalize all vendor relationships before they take control. And if Harrison switches to Morrison Associates, you lose your anchor client and your strongest reference account. I'm sorry, Dex, but I have to do what's best for Harrison Industries under its new ownership. After hanging up with Jennifer, I sat in my office trying to process this latest challenge. Losing Harrison Industries wouldn't destroy Morrison Kim Real Estate Group, but it would significantly impact our growth trajectory and market credibility. More importantly, it would validate Marcus's argument that small firms couldn't compete for major accounts. I called David and explained the situation. His response was characteristically direct. So, we fight for it. We show Blackstone Capital why Harrison Industries chose us in the first place. How do we do that? We prepare the most comprehensive presentation of our work that anyone has ever seen. We document every dollar we've saved Harrison Industries, every innovation we've implemented, every relationship we've strengthened. We make it impossible for them to justify switching vendors. David was right. If we were going to lose Harrison Industries, it wouldn't be without a fight. The next 2 weeks became a blur of preparation. My entire team worked overtime to compile a comprehensive portfolio of our work with Harrison Industries. We documented cost savings, efficiency improvements, and strategic innovations. We gathered testimonials from Harrison employees who'd worked with us. We created detailed comparisons between our approach and that of larger firms. Most importantly, we prepared a presentation that told the story of our partnership with Harrison Industries, from the initial relationship building through the successful headquarters consolidation and ongoing strategic planning. The presentation was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at Harrison Industries' temporary headquarters. The audience would include Jennifer Walsh, several Harrison executives, and 3 representatives from Blackstone Capital who would ultimately make the vendor decision. I arrived at the meeting 30 minutes early, using the time to review my notes and center myself for what could be the most important presentation of my career. Everything I'd built over the past 8 months was on the line. Jennifer greeted me with a warm but worried smile. "Dex, I want you to know that this isn't personal. Blackstone has very specific requirements for vendor relationships." "I understand, Jennifer. I'm just grateful for the opportunity to present our case." The Blackstone representatives were exactly what I'd expected. Sharp-dressed, analytically minded professionals who evaluated everything through the lens of risk management and cost optimization. They introduced themselves with titles that emphasized their expertise in operational efficiency and vendor management. My presentation lasted 45 minutes. I walked through our history with Harrison Industries, demonstrating how our personalized approach had delivered results that exceeded both their operational goals and financial projections. I showed how our smaller size had actually been an advantage, allowing us to provide focused attention, customized solutions that larger firms couldn't match. The Blackstone team asked pointed questions about our capacity to handle expanded operations, our financial stability, and our ability to provide services across multiple geographic markets. "Mr. Morrison," said the lead Blackstone representative, a woman named Patricia Reynolds, "your firm has clearly done excellent work with Harrison Industries. But our concern is about scalability and institutional stability. What happens if you're hit by a bus tomorrow? Does your entire operation collapse?" It was a fair question, and one I'd anticipated. "Patricia, that's exactly why we merged with Pacific North Properties to form Morrison Kim Real Estate Group. David Kim brings 20 years of institutional experience, and we've built redundancy into all our key client relationships. But more importantly, our approach is based on systems and processes, not individual knowledge. And how do you compete with firms that have national reach and established relationships with major corporate clients? We don't try to be everything to everyone. We focus on being the best at what we do, providing personalized, strategic real estate consulting that delivers measurable results. Harrison Industries chose us not despite our size, but because of our size." The questioning continued for another 20 minutes, covering everything from our insurance coverage to our employee retention rates. By the end, I felt confident that I'd addressed their concerns, but the Blackstone team's expressions remained neutral.
Patricia Reynolds concluded the meeting with diplomatic language about evaluating all options and making a decision that best served Harrison Industries' long-term interests. Jennifer walked me to the elevator after the presentation. "You did everything you could, Dex. The rest is out of our hands." "Whatever happens, Jennifer, I want you to know that working with Harrison Industries has been the defining experience of my career. You took a chance on me when no one else would, and I'll never forget that." The call came 3 days later. Jennifer's voice was warm with genuine pleasure. "Dex, I have good news. Blackstone Capital has decided to retain Morrison Kim Real Estate Group as Harrison Industries' strategic real estate partner." I felt my knees go weak with relief. "That's incredible news. What convinced them?" "Your presentation was outstanding, but what really made the difference was the documentation of results, the cost savings, the efficiency improvements, the employee satisfaction metrics. They couldn't argue with the numbers." And Patricia Reynolds mentioned something else. She said it was refreshing to work with a vendor who treated their client as a partner rather than just another account. After hanging up with Jennifer, I gathered my team to share the news. The celebration was subdued but heartfelt. We'd faced our biggest challenge and emerged stronger. David raised a cup of coffee and a mock toast. "To Morrison Kim Real Estate Group, the little firm that could." "To independence," I replied. 6 months later, I received another call from Marcus Chen. This time, his tone was different entirely. "Dex, I owe you an apology. A real one, not a business apology." "What's changed?" "Morrison Associates filed for bankruptcy last week. Theodore's retiring, and the firm is being liquidated. I've been thinking a lot about what went wrong, and I keep coming back to the way I treated you." I was stunned. Morrison Associates, the firm that had been my professional home for 12 years, was gone. "I'm sorry to hear that, Marcus. I know how much that company meant to a lot of people." "The thing is, Dex, you were right. About client relationships, about personalized service, about treating people with respect. I got so focused on climbing the ladder that I forgot why people hire real estate consultants in the first place." "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know yet. I'm hoping someone will give me a chance to prove that I've learned from my mistakes." "Marcus, if you're serious about changing your approach, I might have an opportunity for you. We're looking for someone to head our new institutional client division." There was silence on the other end of the line. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "After everything I did to you, you'd consider hiring me?" "People change, Marcus. People grow. If you're genuinely committed to doing things differently, then yes, I'd consider it." "Why would you take that risk?" I thought about his question, about the journey that had brought me from the lowest point of my career to the position I now occupied. Because someone took a risk on me when I needed it most. Because second chances matter. Because the best teams are built with people who've learned from their failures. Marcus started work at Morrison Kim Real Estate Group 6 weeks later. It wasn't easy. Trust had to be rebuilt gradually, and there were moments when old patterns threatened to resurface. But Marcus proved himself capable of change, and his experience with larger clients complemented our existing strengths. A year later, Morrison Kim Real Estate Group had grown to 15 employees and was consistently ranked among Seattle's top commercial real estate consultancies. We'd expanded our services to include property management and development consulting, while maintaining the personalized approach that had attracted our first clients. I stood in my office one evening, looking out at the Seattle skyline and reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this point. 2 years ago, I'd been a bitter ex-employee clutching a box of personal belongings, convinced that my career was over. Today, I was the founder of a thriving company, surrounded by people I respected and clients who valued our work. The transformation hadn't happened overnight, and it hadn't been easy. There had been moments of doubt, financial stress, and the constant pressure of building something from nothing. But every challenge had been an opportunity to prove that independence and integrity weren't just idealistic concepts, they were practical business advantages. My phone buzzed with a text message from Jennifer Walsh. "Saw the article about Morrison Kim in the Business Journal. Congratulations on everything you've built. Looking forward to many more years of partnership." I smiled and typed back a simple response. "Thank you for believing in us from the beginning." As I prepared to leave the office, I thought about the lessons I'd learned during the most challenging period of my professional life. That betrayal could be a catalyst for growth rather than just a source of bitterness. That success wasn't just about financial achievement, but about building something meaningful and sustainable. That the relationships you nurture during good times become invaluable during difficult ones. Most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you professionally can become the foundation for the best thing that follows. Marcus Chen's betrayal had forced me to discover capabilities I didn't know I possessed and to build something better than anything I could have achieved within the constraints of someone else's vision. The elevator doors closed behind me, carrying me away from another successful day at the company I'd built from nothing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new chances to prove that independence and integrity weren't just business strategies. They were ways of life. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.